welcome to the cover panel, everybody. Thank you for being here. I've already started to lose my voice a little bit, so I'm going to do my best. Just in case there's any confusion, this is not where you come to become a cover designer. This is for authors. I might just hold it. What do you think? Okay, awesome. So we have here some of the best cover designers in the business to answer some of your questions about how to find a designer, how to work with a designer, how to make sure that you get the best possible cover on your book so it has the best chance out there in the world. I'm going to just, my name is Rebekah Haskell. I am the illustrator for vividcovers.com. We do mostly science fiction and fantasy illustrations. And I'm just going to go ahead and let my colleagues here introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Mollica Studios, and GS Stock Art and Design. And well, we're branding specialists. We create book covers. We work with authors to help them identify their brand and their brand development, and develop their series. I'll keep it short, but we do, custom work.
I'm Jake with JK Design. I do primarily urban fantasy, fantasy, and sci-fi. I've been doing covers for about 6 years now, and yeah, I do custom work and some pre-mades, and that's about it.
That literally describes my business exactly. So, I mean, yeah, what he said. I mean, but yeah, you guys can stop by and see all of our work, I think, over at the booth there, at the vendor booth. So, yeah.
And that's Jeff Brown.
He matters.
I let them go first because I can be a little bit long-winded, so I wanted to gauge how much I could say. I'm Stephanie Anderson with Alt19 Creative, and to be honest, I'm kind of honored to be up here because all these guys are artists. My dad was an artist, but for me, I don't necessarily classify myself as an artist. I am a layout and typography designer. I'm not like them where I can start with a blank page and build up. The only thing I can do to build up is vector images. So if you're a romance rom-com person, I'm good at those. I've been in graphic design for over 30 years. I'm probably way older than most of the people here. But for the past 11 years, I've been specifically in the publishing world. And in January 2020, I had the privilege of going out on my own, where before I always worked in the nonfiction world, but now I work in romance. And one of the best privileges I can have is that I'm also a formatter. I'm an InDesign formatter. And I've actually had the privilege of designing a book, and I should have brought it with me, the interior of a book on a cover that Jeff did earlier this year. So it's always a big honor for me to do the interior for some of these amazing artists, for the authors who hire them.
Okay, so I have a few questions for you guys. I want to start out with some of the basics because I know some of you aren't really you're not quite at the cover point yet, and I know some of you probably have already done this before and are looking for ways to like improve that experience for you. I really strongly believe that the cover should be the fun part of publishing. Self-publishing is stressful, and I think the cover should be the fun part of that process. So, question just generally for you guys, at what point during the process of writing a book do you think the author should begin shopping for a designer, and how much time should they allow for the design process? I know that's probably going to differ a little bit, which is kind of why I wanted to ask the question. It's going to differ from person to person. So I wanted to start with Jeff.
So I have a couple answers to that. I think, honestly, as soon as possible, because unfortunately a lot of designers are very booked out. So it's really hard to get on some schedules. So as soon as possible, as soon as you know roughly what you're doing. And I guess the other answer would be also something I'm trying with a couple clients is actually starting the cover and the artwork before the book is written at all or even plotted out, and doing it as more of a collaborative process. So that's also an option. But I would honestly just say as soon as possible, as soon as you know a rough idea, because unfortunately a lot of people are quite booked out. I think I book out like 4 months usually. I don't know how far everybody books out, but that's sort of a rough idea for me. So.
Now,
Yeah.
Gene, I know that sometimes your process can be a little bit more involved because you're in the branding of it and everything like that. So about how long do you prefer your clients to come to you before they need to hit their publication date?
We were saying a couple years ago it was about 90 days because we actually cycled it out and created a chart and really tried to analyze it to keep ourselves on a strict target with them. But to be more accommodating, we'll invite you in pretty quickly. We find that to be also effective and get the conversations rolling. I mean, Sasha and I create these, very cohesive cover briefs. We're very adamant about that. And I think it's a chance for the author to really start to visualize and explore what it is they're writing. Some authors have a great ability to visualize clearly what they want. Others really struggle with that. And so it takes a little bit more time. So it's challenging in both cases. The authors who have great visual sense, we need to develop more. And you're right, we have to get into much more complicated things, custom costumes, models, 3D models, asset development, badges, logos, all these things that we really want to bring to life. And the authors who haven't thought about that at all, we have to have a pretty good discussion about that.
So if you have a client that just wants the whole shebang, they
Yeah.
just want to like go into it,
Yeah.
the whole taco with like everything.
Yeah.
Are we talking like, talk to me a year in advance? Is that what, or
Well-
what are we looking at?
We've had projects that take 2 years to get to market. I think the longest one was a historical romance that the costumes themselves look like museum pieces that we designed. Took 9 months just to get those done. So I think you're right in that. Get a jump on it. Understand how important the cover art process is. It's equally important to your marketing. Marketing dollars without great art assets aren't, in my opinion, going to do anything. I think it's really, really strategic to think of both. So yeah, for people, some authors have really great ideas. So we might start to look at some of those assets and tackle them right away, like 3D assets. We might start their type treatment soon, and then we'll start to get the models and get the photo shoots rolling. We try to move smoothly and efficiently, but yeah, so quicker, get into it. Pretty good. That's my business partner, Sasha. She's, very articulate, which I'm not always articulate.
You're doing great.
Okay.
I'm just going to skip right over you, man. I don't want to hear from you. No. I got another one for you. No, I did want to add, I do also think it's relevant whether or not it's your first book or your 5th or your 60th book. Because I think it's good to start the cover process when you know what the book is going to be. Because the last thing that you want is a cover that the book evolves as you're writing it and you end up with a book that isn't appropriate for the cover, because that's a really frustrating place to be in. But it's more likely for that to happen if this is perhaps your first book. So if it's your first book and you just don't know where it's going to turn out for you because you haven't done this before, it might be something that you want to wait a little longer. Just be aware that you're going to have some time at the end when the book is finished and you're just waiting for those art assets to come in, because usually it is going to take to get on a well-established, which I always recommend, a well-established designer's schedule is going to probably take you a couple of months, and then it's going to take the production time. However, one of the things that I hear from authors that is most frustrating for them, for those of them that have already worked with artists, the thing that can be the most frustrating is not knowing when the deliverables are due, not knowing when are they allowed to see it, when do they get to give their feedback, do I get to get feedback? So those are all questions. That's a conversation you need to have your designer before any agreement is come to, before any money exchanges hands. Have a timeline. Ask them, when do we start? When will it end? When do I get to take a look at it? And have all of those things ironed out beforehand. You don't want to just go with the flow and see what happens. So I'm gonna shoot this at you first, Jay. What should the author include in their creative brief? And will you read their book first?
The last part of that question is really easy to answer. I won't read your book. It's not anything personal. I've designed over 1,000 book covers, and I've read 2 books. I am an extremely slow reader. I love reading. I read every day. I read like 10 books a year. I am super slow. So for me to read it in a timely fashion to get an idea doesn't work. I think the brief it depends on the designer. I have some clients who, this is not going to be the best answer, I'm sorry. I have some people who send me 2 sentences. I have people who send me 2 paragraphs. I have people who send me 2 pages of information. And I can work with all of those as far as it goes. Most of the time, the ones that send me like 2 sentences are clients that I've dealt with a whole bunch, and they know that they trust me in the sense of I can just tell him a couple details, and I know he's going to produce something that is going to rock, you know. And so I would say, if it's important, mention it. That's one of the biggest frustrations I do get, even in the ones that are like 2 pages. I'll design something, a cover, and like I'll give, you know, it might be a fantasy cover, and I may forget to ask what their hair looks like. So if it's a fantasy guy, I'm probably going to do like a shaved head or long hair, right? And then I get it, and they're like, oh yeah, it's blonde, short hair. Well, you know, I wish I'd known that from the jump, and then I could have saved a little bit of time, you know. So if it's important to the cover, it's important to the character. If you're describing a character, give the details that you need to give in that sense. For me, I don't do well with snippets from your book. Like if you go and like, you know, copy and paste a 10-page battle scene, I don't really, I'm not gonna probably extrapolate all the good stuff from that. You know, and for me, I like bullet points. You know, it's battle scene. He looks like this. This is going on. You know, so for me, short and simple usually works best on my end for me to make a good cover. So.
For me, because I'm in romance, there's a couple of things that are important for me to know. So when a client hires me for a custom job, I send out a questionnaire. And for romance, it's important to know your subgenre, okay? Is it sweet romance? Is it clean and wholesome? Is it steamy? Is it rom-com? And also within that, what is your heat level, all right? That's very important because in romance, your cover needs to show your heat level. That'll upset a reader more than anything. Also for romance, I want to know the mood. Is it humorous? Is it dark? Is it witty? The setting is very important to me because in romance, a lot of times as a background, as a backdrop, if it's in a city, we'll have a backdrop of the city. If it's in a small town, we'll do a small town. And again, character description is important, especially for me when I do illustrated covers. Vector art, I will actually draw those out to look exactly like your character. So I want to go to character description. Is it a plus size lady? Is it, you know, a muscle guy? And then your blurb, I want to read your blurb. That's what's really going to give me a good idea. If I can't get the information from your blurb that I need, I will actually ask for a synopsis. And in my case, and I know a lot of designers won't do this, I will be happy to schedule a 5 to 10 minute Zoom call, Facebook, a talk, anything, just so I can get some information, because it's easier to give me the information at the beginning instead of the back end where we have to redo things.
The only thing I wanted to add to that is remember that artists are visual. One of the things that I love is when an author will send me examples of other covers that they really enjoy, and that's the kind of feel that they're going for or the kind of style that they're going for. I love visual examples. And also remember, while it can be helpful to understand what your character's personality and emotional journey is, I really need to know what they're wearing. I need to know what they look like. And remember that it is a visual medium, and that's a really, really good way to communicate with your artist in a way that you will both be on the same page. So I have a question for, I'm going to start with Jean, but I'd also like you to answer this, Stephanie. There are some differences between covers that are created for the traditional market and covers that are created for the indie market. And I've noticed the authors occasionally come up against this. Gene has done an enormous amount of work in traditional publishing. He's been around since long before indie was a thing. So I wanted to get your perspective on that. What can you characterize the differences between the covers that are produced for traditional publishing and indie publishing?
Okay, so you know, traditional publishers do more of what you were talking about. They in 2 sentences. Sometimes they're better about that, and then sometimes we have to go back to them and ask for more. So their whole setup is they generally release 1 book a year of a series. So, and their structure is they're focused on their list, and they might have, you know, a couple hundred books a year. They're doing 30 or 40 a list. So the art directors don't know the content. The editors do, and sometimes they have a little trouble getting that communication to me, which is really tough for us. As we're trying, many times we'll go in and we don't have the right information. So the pleasure for us in dealing with indie authors is we get direct contact. We get to talk to you directly. It's a joy. We get to talk about your whole branding strategy, the whole marketing strategy. We get to understand your vision. I mean, it's nice to know what the hair color is supposed to be. It's nice to know what the character is supposed to be wearing. So we love that. When we're dealing with major pub, out of respect, we kind of roll with them. We know we just have to go back to them more. And probably, but there's a little reluctance because it's a corporate structure. With indies, we can give you 10 headshots. We can give you a lot more examples. We can have more thorough discussions. The authors coming through major pubs, we don't get to talk to them at all. And we can't express all of our ideas. So it's categorically, it's massively different. Some authors through major pubs will try to contact us after the fact and thank us. And some have said, look, when they call you again, maybe we can have this discussion, but it's rare and they don't really want to, they shouldn't, I guess the publishers really don't like them doing that. So, the relationships that we build with our indie authors is just a great pleasure. And we feel like we're more of a creative team, and that's how we often refer to each other, and that's how we start our mornings, and it's just fabulous. So.
The biggest thing to know is that it's not an apples to oranges comparison. Rebecca mentioned just a few minutes ago that when you work with your designer, it's good to show covers that you like in your genre to your designer. Do not show them traditionally published covers. Do not include those in your scope because they're just different. Your traditional authors, they're backed by a marketing budget. They're backed by a publicity campaign. So they are going to market their book then differently from you. Their cover isn't really going to be the first point that a reader is going to look at in a lot of cases, whereas a reader is going to see your first cover first, your cover image first. So that's something important to know, that it's just not an apples to oranges comparison. Give them indie author covers that you like. And one way to do that, if you're not sure, if you go to Amazon and search in the Kindle Unlimited, probably 90% of the books in Kindle Unlimited are going to be indie authors. So if you're not sure how to see the difference between the indie author and the traditional published, that's one way to do it.
Just the one thing I wanted to add is I have come across a lot of authors who are like, I just don't like the indie covers in my genre. I really prefer the traditionally published covers. And it's important to understand that traditionally published authors, the publishers have access to a marketing infrastructure that indies just don't have access to. And so it makes that cover really, really important. And whenever you come up against that, while in like a perfect world, you would absolutely love every aspect of everything that has to do with your novel. You do at some point have to ask yourself, am I selling art or am I selling my book? And if the question is you'd like to sell your book, you have to speak in the language that your market is going to respond the best to. Because it's, at the end of the day, while the cover is very important, I'm a cover designer, so I think it's very important, the point of it is to get the reader to your words. And so whatever does that the best is what you want to go for. Absolutely.
I don't want to ignore, one thing major publishers do extremely well is their typography and their branding, their series development is really excellent. Now, the difference is that they're editorial houses. So their specific function is developing editorial content mass markets want to read, and they're geniuses at that. The problem when it comes to cover art specifically is that there's a lot of levels to get through, and their particular approach can be challenging for us. That's not to say that they don't do a great job when it comes to branding in general. They're excellent at it. And some of the best cover design and some of the best typography, I think, out in the New York marketplace is certainly in book cover design, mostly because those designers are also brand developers. They're in branding. It's just a marketplace for it. So I get a lot of our inspiration from that. I would say, keep an eye on the market, But the advantage of being an indie, in my opinion, is you can get your marketing much more leveled up, and you have control over it, and you have control over those assets. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's a matter of, some of the major publisher authors that we have simply made a decision. That's not what they want. They don't want to do it. They just want to write. And that's fine. That's a choice. Others, very ambitious, love the entire process. And then they're very, very fun to work with. But I think, I just want to make that point, that there's very good work out there. Yeah.
Thank you, Gene. Hang on to that, Jeff. A question I wanted to shoot at you and then Jake is, I wanted you to think of your most rewarding projects that you've worked on, and some of your more frustrating projects, because we all have them. And I'm acknowledging that sometimes they can be one and the same. Can you just, without naming any names, can you identify what it was about the process in those projects that made them either rewarding or frustrating for you specifically?
Yeah. I would say a big thing for me, and this is honestly one of the reasons I stuck with this industry, is the passion for the work. And so when I work with an author who's really excited about the project and is really excited to work with me specifically, that really helps me. So I think one thing we kind of mentioned is that having when somebody comes with you and tempts you and shows you other covers, especially if those are your covers, it's like, okay, I can do something like this, but for your book. But it's like, I know I can do this because they're showing me one of my covers that they already like and is relevant to their project. So that's one thing that really helps me. And then I would say, honestly, trusting. Because a big thing is, I want people to come and work with me who really like my work. I try to be as clear and trustworthy as possible and be open in the industry, and so that people can trust me. And when I want somebody to come to me and trust my work and be willing to accept something and not sort of get too picky about it afterwards. Because I'm more than happy to do changes that are really beneficial to the project. But what happens a lot of times, and I understand it because this is one of your biggest your biggest points of contact as an author. So having this, it needs to be perfect. It needs to get the readers in. And I understand it's so important to have a good cover. But what gets a good cover is hiring a quality, reliable designer and trusting them with your project. Going too much into detail after that and being like, there's this little bit of color over here, there's this little tiny thing, and I don't know about this this ring that's on his third finger is kind of like a little bit off. It actually has 3 snakes, not 2. That kind of stuff really, it doesn't help the cover, doesn't help your marketability, and it just kind of like sucks the soul out of the art. So I'd say, yeah, finding somebody you can trust and then trusting them. And not to say that I don't do changes. It's like I'm happy to do them, but I want them to actually really benefit the project. And I will actually push back quite a bit if it's not going to do that. But a lot of designers won't or don't know quite how, or it's a little bit nerve-wracking. So I'd say knowing that beforehand is really good.
Mine, is it on now? I could be this close to it? Holy crap.
You got to be really good friends with that mic.
Right. We're going to be real close. My answers kind of do parallel Jeff's here a little bit. My most frustrating project was due to my fault. I had just started out in cover design. I've been doing about a year. And I got a guy. And I used to have one of the big hooks for early cover designers is unlimited revisions. And so I used to do that, right? This was the day that this all stopped. And, nobody had really abused that. And then doing work with this guy, and we got to round 8, then we got to round 10, we got to round 13, we got to round 15. And then in round 15, he email said, and this is, not verbatim per se, but he said, let's go back to cover 9. That's the one I want. And and it wasn't the small changes like the ring on the finger. It was like, can we do this pose? Can you have this hat on? Can you do this? Can we do that? Can you do that? And I realized this guy was just shopping. He just wanted me to do a whole bunch of stuff, and then he could just cherry pick which ones he wanted. So that was my fault, and it kind of goes back to what Rebekah said earlier about having clearly defined parameters of the scope of the project. You know, we had went past the scope of the project to an extent, but I had not in my mind, because I didn't think anybody'd ever do that. And then there we were, you know. And so that was my most frustrating project. So my most rewarding project would be actually a publisher, and it happened today. In 2019, I was at 20Books at Samstown, and I met the Wolfpack Publishing team, right? And I had never done really any Western covers for them, and I got introduced to them, and like they said they wanted some Western covers, and I could tell I think they were a little hesitant to hire me because my portfolio had no Western covers, and I was like, man, if you just let me do one, I can make this happen. You know, I love Western, I love pulp Western covers from old and that kind of stuff, and I was like, just let me have a chance at it, right? So I worked with them, and from there till even to today, we still do covers together. And I don't think he'll mind me mentioning this, but I saw Mike Bray today when I was coming in, and he introduced me to one of his friends, and he said he looked at his friend. He said, "I want to introduce you to the guy who's made me over $100,000." And I thought, well, my rate should go up. No. But my relationship with Wolfpack is very much what I said earlier. Even from the jump, the very first cover that I did for them, they gave me a couple sentences for what they wanted, and then they just said, they didn't say it, but they trusted me to come back with something. And then that relationship has apparently turned in for pretty much profitable. They keep hiring me back, so I guess I'm doing something right. And then from Mike's comment, I guess it is working out. But they trust me to make something awesome because I am a huge fantasy fan. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I'm a huge urban fantasy fan. I want to, and not just in reading, but in seeing artwork. So when I get to do a cover, I want to make something that I want to see, like something that I want to buy. And so the trust in that to them to say, here, you know, you go at it, and we'll. Sorry, my phone is beeping at me. And we'll, you know, and we trust you to do it. You know, the trust in that, and I understand, especially for first-time authors, that's a big deal because it's like your first baby. You know, you're kind of like, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to watch after it. No one's going to touch it. It's mine, and I will protect it. You know, and then by your second child, you're more, hey, you guys go have fun and don't come back to me ever again. But there's a trust factor there, you know, and we do that all the time with mechanics, with doctors, with whatever, you know, and that has to be established. So sometimes when you're meeting a designer for the first time, it can be a challenge to get that trust out there. But like I said, look at their portfolio can show you that they do good work. I'm getting off tangent now, but that's my most successful project. So
Thank you. I don't know if are we working anymore? Is this working now? Okay, I'll just use this one. I like that you both mentioned trust. I think sometimes with authors, that's a hard one, especially if it's your first time with a cover designer. And it's hard to relinquish control. That I totally get that's hard. But one of the things that I think translates the best as an example to authors of the reason why, once you get down into the real weeds, into the nitpickery of I need this 10 pixels to the left. If you've ever had a piece of writing, okay, that it came out of you like it was fire, okay, and then you give it to somebody to edit, and it comes back with red all the way through it, okay, and somewhere along the line, all of the life and the magic and the artistry of that piece of writing is gone, and it has had the life edited out of it. The same thing can happen with art, and almost in my experience, and I've been doing this for about 8 years for indie authors. In my experience, the more of that happens, in almost every single case, you get a lower quality product in the end. It doesn't help. It's not that it just doesn't help the cover. In a lot of cases, it will actively hurt the cover. So I think it's really important to hire the right designer and to make sure that they have examples of what you want in their portfolio, so that you know that they can do the kind of thing that you're looking for, and hire the best person for the job, and then let them do the job. And that's easier said than done sometimes. But speaking on the aspect of trust, because I know that this is something that kind of lurks in the back of the minds of like everybody, and I want to leave a little bit of time for some Q&A. So I just wanted to touch over this briefly because I do think it's important, and I want to get all of you on this. How can an author avoid being taken advantage of by unscrupulous cover service providers? Because it is something that happens. Every industry has somebody trying to take advantage of somebody. And so what are the best practices that the author can observe to avoid that?
One thing is that cover designers come and go. I often will hear an author say, my cover designer is no longer in the business. What do I do? They have a series that they're working on. Make sure you're hiring a cover designer who has some longevity in the industry. And one of the ways to tell that, I think, is that a lot of cover designers will only have a Facebook group. They will not have a website. So in my opinion, I think it's important to hire a cover designer who has a website, because that shows their commitment, that they're not just going to be having a Facebook presence, they're actually having a presence all around. And just make sure you ask for referrals and make sure, they do the design work that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are in the 21st century. We can get pretty good at telling what is a trustworthy business and what isn't. And I think sometimes we can get emotional when we look at the art and we're like, "That I want that." It's just making sure you do all the procedures to make sure that it looks like a trustworthy business. So yeah, exactly. Having a website is great. I mean, things like Readsy are great for this. I think we're all on Readsy, right? So it's a place where we can't fake any of the reviews like that. It's kind of so you're paying a bit extra for that, but something like that's a good service. Making sure that people are just out there in the industry. They're out there in multiple social media. They got bigger clients. They've got. I mean, I think a lot of us know how to look through that. Just making sure it's not getting emotional and trusting that kind of reliability. And somebody that's been in the industry for a while is really helpful. Because one of the things I guess that happens a lot with designers is copying designs. It's stealing from other people. You get the worst in Fiverr, which is actually just completely grubbing. Like we've all had covers, just literally people are like, "Hey, here's my cover," and it's my that's my cover. So making sure that you get somebody who's not and not just stealing an idea completely from another cover. And that's what you get when you work with somebody who's been in the industry for a while and has a good working relationship with well-known authors.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what they just said as far as it goes, especially the whole their web presence. If they've got Twitter, if they got website, they got group Facebook, they got all that. They're probably in it here for professional reasons or for the long haul as far as it goes. Like for my group. If somebody if it says they created their account, 2 months ago or a month ago or a week ago, you're probably not gonna get accepted because I don't trust that because if they've been there for 17 years, you can be accepted. But so I mean, there's a trust thing, there's a trust part in that. So I mean, or I don't know if I trust that profile. So that same mentality, goes over to the cover designers. Also, this is not 100% accurate, but you get what you pay for. Typically, and I don't want to say you need to go hire, you need to, blow your whole entire budget on a cover designer, but I'm just saying a $100 cover designer may flake. A $500 cover designer probably won't, and that's just a random general numbers to throw at you, because, the higher ends are usually full-time cover designers. They're supporting their families and that kind of stuff, where the lower end probably are people who are fly-by-nights. They may decide, I don't want to do this anymore. And I can't tell you from the industry day, I probably had 10 people tell me their designer ghosted them. And that's a terrible part of this industry that is it can be a fly-by-night thing. And, so that's just something to be aware of as far as it goes.
I'm so glad you brought that up because then I didn't have to be the icebreaker on that. Because we heard the same thing. And we see it, we heard it a lot here, for sure. And I think it's because there could be more awareness built around cover art budgets. I think they're artificially really low. There's this idea that they can exist at 150, I think that's way ridiculous. I'm just going to say it. I think you're going to get in trouble at that level. We spoke to multiple people. We looked at the results, and it all made sense. I think when you start to look at more reputable people who've been around a much longer time and are running, businesses where they actually back your files up, they care about your product, they care about you making a lot of money and you having a great presence out there because that's what you're hiring us to do, you're gonna have to have a bigger budget. I think you should start to think about those budgets when you sit down and analyze your whole business plan for marketing your book. I wouldn't make this a side thing. This is not a side thing. A lot of our authors take the marketing more seriously. I think it's only because marketing's discussed more. But I think you need to equally look at the cover. It's not nail your budget for the marketing at X amount and then, I'm going to squeak my cover in. That's where I think a lot of our clients got into not trouble, but they eventually come to us and they level it all out and they balance it out and they see great successes. We know they see great successes because the next thing they're doing is they're asking us to put USA Today bestseller all over their books, and we see their reviews. We see them getting picked up by major publishers. So it does work. I know it works. But I think you want to really get a real budget for your book established. Like we all do in business, websites cost this, cars cost this. Everything in your business costs something. Consider the cover art budget.
I just want to quickly add, because I know this particular conversation here can be a little overwhelming as soon as, especially as we start talking about money. Okay, there are ways to cover your book, even if you don't have hundreds and hundreds of dollars to spend. That's the reason pre-mades exist. That's the reason pre-mades exist, and you may have to get something that's like not exactly what you pictured in your head, but that will still speak to your audience. That's completely doable on a much lower budget. But if you want custom work, please pay custom prices, because it's one of the bigger pitfalls to that an author can come to when they're trying to get a cover. If you want custom work, you have to understand the time that's involved. And if you're paying somebody 16 cents an hour to do your cover, you can't expect to have a really healthy working relationship with that person that's going to last, years, So just if you're going for that custom work, then definitely you're going to have to invest a little bit more than if you're going the pre-made route. But going the pre-made route is entirely legit. You can get some great covers as pre-mades. I wanted to stop here and just see if there are any questions that anybody has, and we might be able to take, looks like we might have time for two. I'm right here on the front row.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, I know I've had a hard time with understanding how long something really takes, right? I've started to do some graphic design stuff myself, and it's all self-taught. So, until you get into it, you have no idea it's not just 3 clicks to change, like how you said your guy did that. I had one experience with that on some invitations. It was crazy. So on a consumer side, do you guys have any recommendations for us to educate ourselves so that we can have a realistic expectation as to what we need to give you and what you're going to give us? Because I don't want you to work for 16 cents an hour either, but without having your experience, for someone who's never done anything graphically, we wouldn't have a clue.
I think the big thing will be, like she said earlier, define your parameters to begin with. With Gene saying, we can, at this point in the process, you'll have this, da-da-da-da-da. You ask that from the jump. When can I expect the first proof? When can I expect, this? How long do you think it'll take? That was one of the biggest questions I got asked at the industry day was, how long does it take? My timeline, is different from Gene's, it's different from Jeff's. It's going to vary from cover designer to cover designer because we all have different skill sets, different speeds, and that kind of stuff. So just ask from the jump, and you know, that's them, and they can give you. They should, if they cannot give you any kind of even just random, I mean, rough estimates, that might be a red flag as far as it goes. So people who've been in the industry before can give you an idea of it's going to take about this long, this long, this long. So.
Also along those lines, if you're like in the middle of a project and you want to change and you're just not sure what this entails and you're like, I don't know if this is a big ask or a small ask, just ask the designer. Say, I have this in mind. I don't know how big a deal it is. Is this something that we can do, or is this something and if it ends up being a big thing and you really want this change, offer to pay for it. And most designers will be happy to do that. I've got another one here in the back. Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hi.
You already have it.
I wanted to ask, do you have to, or would you recommend using the same artist for a series to keep the covers thematic?
Easy answer right there. If possible, if possible. It's not always possible, and there are things that you can do to keep continuity over series if you're not able to. But yes, if all possible.
I think, and also, if you're not able to continue a series, it's a big courtesy thing between designers to, if you do need somebody to do a different book for your second book, to make sure you have permission from that first designer, because that's like a big stepping on each other's toes. If I just do somebody else's second book without asking for their, because I'm at that point I have to kind of copy their typography and everything. So that's just a professional courtesy thing. They're having fun. Yeah. Let's go over there.
All right, go ahead, right there in the back.
Well, that actually kind of addressed my question, which was I have a series that I'm 3 books in, and my cover designer is kind of ghosted, and I'm trying to figure out what to do as I move forward with the series. So would I try approaching an artist and say, I can't even reach the guy that did my first cover, or would I just try getting, should I just recover the entire series and go with the new artist? And like recover books 1 through 3 and get the new artist to do 4 through 6.
This has come up, and I would love to hear somebody else's opinion on this as well. But people have said, I've been ghosted. I don't know what to do. Really, it's going to be up to the designer that you are looking to hire. The designer may recommend recovering all books. So for me, I would actually try to reach out to that designer myself on the author's behalf, because the author may not be telling me the truth that they've been ghosted. So I just want to make sure I cover all my bases, because we take cling to the covers, so we consider them our pieces of art. And so if you're copying somebody, they're going to get offended by that, and it may make them upset. So just try to cover all your bases for that.
That's about all the time that we have. Thank you so much for coming, and I want to thank these lovely designers for their help on the panel. If you have other questions, we can go out in the hall and chat about it more. We love talking about this stuff. We love it. So please don't be afraid to approach any of us if you have more questions.